Young, black, and unassuming, he boarded the luxury jet, dreaming not of its opulence but of the skies it would conquer. A sharp, stinging slap from a flight attendant, her eyes cold with a prejudice she didn't bother to hide, shattered his quiet anticipation. She dismissed him as insignificant, a stowaway in a world she believed he didn't belong. She had no idea that the gleaming aircraft, the very air they were about to share, was under the silent command of his father. Her momentary act of disdain was about to ground more than just a flight. It was about to detonate a reckoning that would echo through the industry. Friends, viewers, and seekers of truth, welcome back to our channel. We're so glad you've chosen to spend your time with us today. The story you are about to immerse yourselves in is more than just a sequence of events. It's a profound look at the insidious nature of prejudice and the unexpected ways justice can manifest. It's a narrative that peels back the veneer of civility to expose the raw nerves of bias that can exist even in the most exclusive settings. We'd be honored if you'd share where you're watching from in the comments section below. Connecting with our community is something we deeply value. If compelling stories that provoke thought, challenge assumptions, and inspire action are what you seek, please consider subscribing to our channel and activating that notification bell. Here, we are dedicated to bringing forward voices that resonate with truth and narratives that demand to be heard. Your engagement fuels our mission. Thank you for being an integral part of this journey. Now, settle in, because the turbulence in this story isn't in the skies, but in the hearts of those who dared to underestimate the power of a father's love and the reach of his righteous anger. The air in the private terminal at Van Nuys Airport hummed with a unique blend of hushed efficiency and palpable wealth. It wasn't the chaotic, impersonal thrum of LAX. This was a curated experience, a seamless transition from solid ground to the boundless sky for those who measured their time in influence rather than minutes. 17-year-old Marcus Thorne Jr. walked through the polished granite lobby, a worn copy of The Right Stuff tucked under his arm and a simple, unbranded backpack slung over one shoulder. He was tall and lanky, with intelligent, observant eyes that often held a hint of wistful dreaming. Today, those dreams were pointed eastward, towards a family reunion in Aspen, a rare convergence of the Thorne clan that his father, Marcus Thorne Sr., had orchestrated with the precision of a corporate takeover. Marcus Jr., or MJ, as his family called him, was not what most people pictured when they heard the name Thorne. His father was a titan, a self-made billionaire who had risen from the tough streets of Inglewood to dominate the global tech and sustainable energy sectors. Marcus Thorne Sr. was a name whispered with awe in boardrooms and with respect in philanthropic circles, a man whose innovations powered cities and whose quiet investments shaped futures. He was also fiercely private, shunning the limelight and instilling in his son a sense of humility and a deep-seated understanding that true worth wasn't measured in stock portfolios or social media followers, but in integrity and impact. MJ had inherited his father's keen intellect and his mother's artistic soul. He was a gifted coder, already with a couple of promising app prototypes to his name, but his real passion lay in the heavens. Aviation wasn't just a hobby, it was a language he understood, a realm of physics and freedom that captivated him. He knew the specs of the Thorne Industries Gulfstream G700, call sign N700TH, better than some of the pilots. He could talk for hours about wing dynamics and avionics systems, his usual quiet demeanor dissolving into animated enthusiasm. This flight to Aspen wasn't just a means to an end. It was another chance to be close to the machines he loved, to feel the powerful surge of takeoff, to witness the world shrink beneath him. He didn't dress like the son of a billionaire, preferring comfortable jeans, a vintage NASA t-shirt, and worn sneakers. There were no flashy watches, no designer logos. His quiet confidence and polite manners were his only calling cards. He'd been taught to observe, to listen more than he spoke, and to treat everyone with respect, from the CEO to the janitor. It was a lesson his father had drilled into him, a counter-narrative to the entitlement that often clung to generational wealth. The loudest person in the room, MJ, his father often said, is usually the one with the least to say of substance. Today, he was flying solo, a rare occurrence. His father was already in Europe, closing a major deal, and would be rerouting to Aspen directly from Zurich. His mother was overseeing the final touches on a new children's wing at a hospital in Chicago, a project funded by the Thorne Foundation. MJ was the advance guard, tasked with ensuring his notoriously particular grandmother had her preferred brand of Earl Grey tea and that the ski equipment was perfectly tuned. It was a responsibility he took seriously, a small cog in the well-oiled machine of his family's life. He checked in at the dedicated Thorne Industries counter, a small, discreet alcove away from the main flow of the FBO. The agent, a young woman named Sarah, smiled warmly. "Good morning, Mr. Thorne, Jr. All set for Aspen? Your father called ahead. Everything is ready for you on board." "Thanks, Sarah." "Morning," MJ replied, returning the smile. He liked Sarah. She always asked about his latest flight simulator challenges. The G700 gleamed on the tarmac, a sleek silver dart against the hazy California sky. It was a marvel of engineering, a symbol of his father's success. But to MJ, it was simply beautiful. As he approached the air stairs, he saw the flight attendant, a woman he didn't recognize, standing at the top. She was blonde, in her late 40s, with a perfectly coiffed helmet of hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her name tag read Brenda. Brenda was a senior flight attendant, recently transferred to the corporate flight division of the charter company Thorne Industries, often used for supplemental lift when their own fleet was fully committed. She prided herself on her professionalism, her ability to anticipate the needs of the ultra-wealthy, but beneath the veneer of service lay a rigid set of expectations and a quickly formed judgment about who belonged in her rarefied airspace. MJ, with his casual attire and youthful appearance, didn't immediately register on Brenda's VIP radar. She was expecting the son of Marcus Thorne Sr., a name synonymous with power and unimaginable wealth. In her mind, that meant bespoke suits, an air of command, perhaps a retinue. What she saw was a teenager who looked like he might have wandered in from a local skate park. A seed of misjudgment, small but potent, began to sprout. This was not the first time MJ's unassuming appearance had caused a flicker of confusion, but it was usually quickly dispelled by his polite introduction or the subtle deference of the ground crew. Today, however, the usual buffers were absent. His father wasn't there. The familiar flight crew who knew him by sight were on a different rotation. He was just a young black man, about to step into a space where Brenda held all the perceived authority, and Brenda, unfortunately, had a long-held, unexamined bias that equated youth and casual dress, especially in a person of color, with a lack of status, or worse, a potential problem. The stage was set for a collision of perception and reality, a storm brewing at the door of an eagle's nest. MJ ascended the air stairs, his worn backpack feeling a little heavier under the flight attendant's cool, appraising gaze. "Good morning," he offered, his voice polite, if a little subdued. He was always a bit shy around new people. Brenda's smile tightened. "May I help you?" she asked, her tone dripping with a saccharine condescension that immediately set MJ's teeth on edge. It wasn't a question, it was a challenge. "I'm Marcus Thorne, Jr.," he said, expecting her expression to shift, to recognize the name. It didn't, or if it did, it was a flicker of disbelief, quickly masked. Right, she said, drawing the word out. And you're flying with us to Aspen today? Her eyes did a quick, dismissive sweep of his attire. The NASA t-shirt, the slightly faded jeans, the sneakers. Each item seemed to confirm a preconceived notion in her mind. Yes, that's correct, MJ replied, a knot of unease forming in his stomach. He wasn't used to this kind of scrutiny, especially not here, not in this context. Boarding pass and ID, please, Brenda requested, her voice still coated in that overly sweet yet somehow sharp tone. MJ blinked. He'd never been asked for ID by the cabin crew on his father's plane, or the charters before, especially after being cleared by ground security and the manifest. It should all be on the manifest. Sarah at the counter. Procedure, dear, Brenda interrupted, her smile unwavering but her eyes hardening. We have to be sure everyone who boards belongs here, for security. The implication hung heavy in the air. You might not belong here. Slightly flustered, MJ fumbled in his backpack for his wallet, pulling out his driver's license and handing it over. Brenda examined it for a moment, her lips pursed. She handed it back without comment, then gestured vaguely towards the cabin. Your seat is 3A. Please stow your bag completely under the seat in front of you, or in an overhead compartment, and try not to wander about too much before takeoff. The instruction, seemingly innocuous, was delivered with an edge that made MJ feel like a scolded child, not a passenger. He murmured a thank you and moved past her into the luxurious cabin. The G700's interior was understated elegance, cream leather, polished dark wood, subtle brushed metal accents. It was designed for comfort and productivity, a flying office and sanctuary. He usually felt a sense of peace here, but Brenda's attitude had cast a pall over the experience. He found seat 3A and slid into the plush chair, stowing his backpack. He pulled out his book, hoping to lose himself in the world of test pilots and rocket engines, but his mind kept replaying the interaction at the door. It wasn't just her words, it was the way she'd looked at him, as if he were an anomaly, an unwelcome surprise. A few minutes later, Brenda was making her way through the cabin, checking on the other two passengers who had boarded. An elderly couple, long-time friends of his grandmother, whom MJ knew vaguely. Her demeanor with them was entirely different. Warm, solicitous, almost fawning. The contrast was stark and unsettling. As she passed MJ's seat, he made the mistake of having his foot slightly in the aisle as he adjusted his position. He was trying to get more comfortable, his long legs feeling a bit cramped. "Excuse me!" Brenda's voice was sharp, cutting through the quiet hum of the cabin. MJ looked up, startled. "Your foot, young man. It's a tripping hazard. Keep your limbs within your designated seat space, please." "Oh, sorry," MJ mumbled, pulling his foot back immediately. He felt a flush of embarrassment creep up his neck. It was a minor thing, but her tone was disproportionately harsh. He tried to ignore it, to focus on his book, but he could feel her eyes on him. A few minutes later, he decided to get a bottle of water from the small galley. As he stood up, Brenda, who was arranging some items nearby, turned abruptly. "And where do you think you're going?" she demanded, her voice rising. "Just to get some water," MJ explained, gesturing towards the galley. "Passengers are to remain seated until the captain turns off the seatbelt sign after takeoff," she snapped. "Did you not hear the pre-boarding announcement?" "We haven't even closed the doors yet," MJ pointed out, confused. "And the seatbelt sign isn't on." Brenda's face flushed. "I am in charge of this cabin, and my instructions are to be followed. You are causing a disruption. Is there something you don't understand about that?" Her voice was louder now, drawing the attention of the elderly couple, who looked over with concerned expressions. MJ felt a surge of frustration, but he fought to keep his voice even. "I understand perfectly. I just don't understand why you're speaking to me this way. I haven't done anything wrong." "Oh, I think you have," Brenda retorted, stepping closer, her eyes blazing with an anger that seemed to come from a place far deeper than this minor exchange. "You young people think you can just waltz in anywhere, disregard rules, show no respect. You think this is some kind of public bus?" Her voice dripped with contempt. The racial undertones, though unspoken, were deafening to MJ. "That's not fair," MJ said, his own voice rising slightly despite his efforts. "I haven't disrespected anyone. You've been treating me like a criminal since I stepped on this plane." "How dare you!" Brenda shrieked, her carefully constructed composure shattering. "You accuse me after your insolence?" And then, in a shocking, impulsive act of fury, her hand lashed out. The crack of her palm connecting with MJ's cheek echoed in the suddenly silent cabin. MJ stumbled back, his hand flying to his face, his cheek stinging, his mind reeling in disbelief. The elderly woman gasped. Her husband looked horrified. Brenda stood there, chest heaving, her face contorted with rage, perhaps even a flicker of her own shock at what she'd just done. The slap wasn't just a physical assault. It was a profound violation, a distillation of all the suspicion and disdain she had shown him. In that moment, the luxury jet felt less like a sanctuary and more like a cage. The quiet anticipation of flight had been violently, irrevocably grounded by an act of pure, unadulterated prejudice. The silence that followed the slap was thick and suffocating, broken only by Mrs. Henderson's, the elderly passenger, sharp intake of breath. MJ's cheek throbbed, a fiery testament to Brenda's loss of control. More than the physical pain, however, was the searing humiliation, the feeling of being singled out and assaulted for reasons he couldn't comprehend beyond the color of his skin and his youthful appearance. His mind raced, trying to process the sheer audacity of her action. He'd faced microaggressions before, the subtle slights and patronizing tones, but never anything this overt, this violent. Brenda herself seemed momentarily stunned by her own actions. A flicker of something, fear, regret, crossed her face before it hardened again into a mask of defensive indignation. She drew herself up as if preparing to justify the unjustifiable. "You see what you made me do?" she hissed, her voice trembling slightly. "You were being aggressive. I felt threatened." Mr. Henderson, a retired judge with a calm but authoritative demeanor, finally spoke, his voice low but firm. "That is an outrageous falsehood, madam. This young man did nothing to provoke such an action." "We witnessed the entire exchange. You were the aggressor." Brenda whirled on him. "Stay out of this, sir. This is a security matter." "It is an assault matter," Mr. Henderson corrected, his eyes like chips of ice, "and I will be reporting it as such." MJ, still cradling his cheek, found his voice. It was shaky but resolute. I want to speak to the captain, and I need to call my father." Brenda laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Oh, you want to call your daddy, do you? I'm sure he'll be very interested to hear how his son misbehaves on private aircraft. The captain is busy with pre-flight. He doesn't have time for your theatrics." She clearly still hadn't connected the name Thorne with the silent, immense power behind it. To her, MJ was just some troublesome kid who'd gotten what he deserved. "I insist," MJ said, taking a deep breath to steady himself. He pulled out his phone. "You will do no such thing," Brenda snapped, reaching for his phone. "No cellular devices are permitted once the main cabin door is preparing for closure." "The door isn't closed," MJ retorted, holding his phone tighter, "and this is an emergency." The tension in the cabin was palpable. The Hendersons were watching with undisguised disapproval of Brenda. MJ could feel his heart pounding, a mixture of anger, fear, and a desperate need to reclaim some measure of control. He knew his father's cardinal rule: Stay calm, under pressure, think clearly, act decisively. He was trying, but the sting on his cheek and the injustice of it all made it difficult. He quickly dialed his father's direct satellite line, a number reserved for true emergencies. His father, Marcus Thorne Sr., was a man who could move mountains with a single phone call. But MJ had never abused that privilege. This, however, felt different. This wasn't about getting his way. It was about an egregious wrong that needed to be addressed. As the phone rang in his ear, once, twice, Brenda continued her tirade. "You think you're special. You think rules don't apply to you? I've dealt with your type before, always pushing, always demanding." Her words were a torrent of prejudice, thinly veiled. "Brenda, that's enough." A new voice cut in. It was the co-pilot, Captain Miller, who had emerged from the cockpit, alerted by the raised voices. He was a younger man, mid-30s, and had flown for Thorne Industries before, though not with MJ personally. His expression was stern as he surveyed the scene. "What in God's name is going on here?" Before Brenda could launch into her self-serving version of events, MJ spoke, his voice still tight but clear. She slapped me, Captain, for no reason." Captain Miller's eyes widened. He looked from MJ's reddened cheek to Brenda's furious face, then to the Hendersons, who both nodded in confirmation. "Is this true, Brenda?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "He was being disruptive, insubordinate. He threatened me." Brenda sputtered, her story already unraveling under the weight of multiple witnesses. Just then, MJ's father answered the phone. His voice, usually warm and resonant, was clipped with concern. "MJ, what is it? Are you all right? You shouldn't be calling this line unless—" "Dad," MJ interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm on the G700, N700TH. There's a flight attendant here. She hit me." There was a dead silence on the other end of the line for a beat, a silence so profound MJ thought the call had dropped. Then Marcus Thorne Sr.'s voice came back, transformed. It was cold, hard, and utterly lethal. "She what? Give me her name, son, and put the captain on the phone, now." MJ looked at Captain Miller. "My father wants to speak with you. His name is Marcus Thorne Sr." The color drained from Captain Miller's face. He knew that name. Everyone in aviation, especially in the high-end charter and corporate world, knew that name. He looked at Brenda with dawning horror, realizing the magnitude of the incident that had just unfolded under his command. Brenda, however, still seemed oblivious, or perhaps unwilling to comprehend the implications. She scoffed. "Oh, now we're bringing fathers into it. This is ridiculous." Captain Miller ignored her, his attention fully on MJ. "Mr. Thorne, Sr. is on the phone," he asked, his voice barely a whisper. MJ nodded, holding out the phone. The captain took the phone, his hand trembling slightly. "Mr. Thorne, sir, this is Captain Miller, first officer on N700. "Yes, sir. I understand, sir. I'm just now learning the details." "Yes, absolutely, sir." His face grew paler with each passing second. He shot a venomous glare at Brenda, who was now watching with a dawning, terrified understanding. The name Thorne had finally catastrophically registered. The passengers, MJ and the Hendersons, sat in stunned silence, listening to the one-sided conversation. Captain Miller was a study in professional deference and growing alarm. "Yes, sir, the aircraft is still at the gate at Van Nuys. The main door is still open. I understand your instructions perfectly, sir. It will be done immediately." He handed the phone back to MJ, his expression grim. "Your father has given some very clear instructions, MJ, and I suggest everyone comply." He turned to Brenda, his voice now devoid of any warmth. "Brenda, you are to gather your personal belongings. You will be deplaning. Now, your services are no longer required on this aircraft, or, I suspect, with this charter company ever again. Brenda's jaw dropped. What? You can't be serious. On whose authority? On the authority of the man who owns the company that charters this jet and whose son you just assaulted, Captain Miller stated, his voice flat. Mr. Marcus Thorne, Sr. He has also instructed me to keep the aircraft grounded. We are not going anywhere until he arrives personally or sends his explicit clearance. He's rerouting his own jet and will be here in a few hours. The finality in his tone was absolute. The reality of her actions and their immediate, devastating consequences slammed into Brenda with the force of a physical blow. Her face, moments before contorted with rage, crumpled into a mask of disbelief and terror. The power dynamic in the cabin had not just shifted, it had been utterly seismically overturned. The boy she had dismissed, insulted and assaulted, was the son of one of the most powerful yet understated men in the country, and her career, built on years of service in the rarefied air of luxury travel, had just been unceremoniously, irrevocably grounded. The Hendersons exchanged a look that was a mixture of shock and grim satisfaction. MJ, still shaken, felt a strange mixture of vindication and a heavy sadness. This wasn't how he'd wanted his journey to begin, but the wheels of justice, set in motion by a single ill-judged slap, were now turning with unstoppable force. The transformation in Brenda was instantaneous and complete. The haughty arrogance, the condescending sneer, the righteous fury, all evaporated, replaced by a raw, panicked fear that stripped away her professional veneer. Her eyes, wide and darting, fixed on Captain Miller, then on MJ, as if seeing him for the first time. The name Marcus Thorne, Sr. echoed in the luxurious cabin, not as a boast, but as a quiet declaration of an unassailable truth she had blithely ignored. Mr. Thorne. Senior? She stammered, the words barely audible. But I didn't know. That's precisely the problem, isn't it? Captain Miller said, his voice cold. You made assumptions, you escalated. You assaulted a passenger, a minor no less. And you did it on an aircraft chartered by his father's company. Your lack of awareness is not an excuse, it's an indictment of your judgment. The weight of those words seemed to crush Brenda. She sank slightly, her shoulders slumping. The fight was gone, replaced by the dawning realization of her catastrophic misstep. This wasn't just about losing her temper, it was about a profound failure of professionalism, a lapse in judgment so severe it threatened to end her career. MJ watched her, a strange mixture of emotions churning within him. There was no triumph, no satisfaction in seeing her crumble. There was only a weary sadness that it had come to this, that her prejudice had been so blind, so ingrained, that it had led her to this point of no return. He touched his still tender cheek, the physical reminder of her aggression. My father, MJ said, his voice quiet but firm, finding its strength again, expects a full report from you, Captain, and he wants to ensure the Hendersons are comfortable and informed. He looked at the elderly couple, who offered him small, reassuring smiles. He also said he'll handle things from here. The phrase, handle things, coming from Marcus Thorne Sr., was not a vague promise. It was a statement of intent. It meant swift, decisive action. It meant accountability. It meant that the full weight of his considerable influence would be brought to bear. Captain Miller nodded curtly. Of course, I'll speak with the Hendersons immediately, and I'll begin documenting everything for Mr. Thorne. He then turned back to Brenda, his expression unyielding. You have 5 minutes to collect your things and disembark. The ground crew will escort you from the tarmac. Do not cause any further disturbance. Brenda, looking utterly defeated, nodded numbly. She moved as if in a daze, her movements jerky and uncoordinated, towards the small crew rest area to gather her purse and coat. The crisp, immaculate uniform now seemed to mock her, a symbol of a status she had just irrevocably lost. Meanwhile, Captain Miller approached the Hendersons. "Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, on behalf of the flight crew and the charter company, I offer our sincerest apologies for what you've just witnessed and for the distress caused to young Mr. Thorne. This is an unacceptable breach of conduct, and I assure you it will be dealt with at the highest levels. Mr. Thorne Sr. is personally intervening." "Thank you, Captain," Mr. Henderson said gravely. "We appreciate that. And we are, of course, prepared to provide a full account of what transpired. This young man," he gestured towards MJ, "showed remarkable restraint in the face of extreme provocation." Mrs. Henderson reached out and patted MJ's arm gently. "You were very brave, dear." MJ managed a small smile. "Thank you." The atmosphere in the cabin, though still tense, had shifted from confrontation to a somber waiting period. The hidden power, not just the Thorne family's wealth, but their unwavering expectation of respect and their swift response to injustice, had been revealed. It wasn't ostentatious or loud. It was a quiet, unshakable force that, once engaged, altered everything in its path. Brenda emerged from the crew area, her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She avoided looking at anyone as she walked towards the open cabin door, where a member of the ground staff was now waiting. She paused at the threshold, a final desperate appeal in her eyes as she looked at Captain Miller. He simply stared back, his expression implacable. With a choked sob, Brenda stepped out of the G700, her career in luxury aviation likely over, her reputation in tatters. As the cabin door hissed shut, sealing off the immediate drama, MJ let out a long, shaky breath. He felt drained, yet strangely calm. His father was handling it. Those words were an anchor in the storm of emotions he was experiencing. The plane was grounded, his travel plans disrupted, but something far more significant had been set in motion. A line had been drawn, not just in the sand, but in the polished chrome and luxurious leather of a private jet, a testament to the fact that sometimes the most unassuming individuals carry the weight of unseen power, and that an act of prejudice, no matter how high it flies, can be brought crashing down to earth by the simple, unwavering force of truth and consequence. The wait for his father's arrival would be long, but MJ knew with a certainty that settled deep in his bones that justice was already in flight. The Van Nuys private terminal, usually a haven of discreet comings and goings, became the unexpected stage for a drama that unfolded with quiet intensity over the next few hours. While the G700 N700TH sat silently on the tarmac, a gleaming testament to the abrupt halt in its journey, a different kind of machinery was whirring into action. The formidable apparatus of Marcus Thorne Sr.'s influence and his demand for accountability. Captain Miller, true to his word, meticulously documented the incident. He took detailed statements from MJ and the Hendersons, his pen scratching across the official report forms with a gravity that underscored the seriousness of the situation. He also reviewed the internal CCTV footage from the cabin, which, though without audio, starkly corroborated MJ's and the Hendersons' account of Brenda's escalating aggression and the shocking moment of the slap. The visual evidence was damning. News of an incident involving a Thorne Industries charter and an alleged assault on Marcus Thorne Sr.'s son rippled through the executive levels of Elite Sky Charters, the company that employed Brenda, with the speed and impact of a shockwave. Phones buzzed frantically. Urgent meetings were convened. The CEO of Elite Sky, a man named David Riley, who had personally cultivated a relationship with Thorne Industries, felt a cold dread seep into his bones. An incident like this, involving a client as significant and private as Marcus Thorne Sr., wasn't just bad for business, it was potentially catastrophic. Within 2 hours, Riley himself arrived at Van Nuys, his face a mask of controlled panic. He was met not by Thorne Sr. yet, but by a phalanx of Thorne Industries' top legal counsel and security personnel, who had materialized with an efficiency that spoke volumes. They were polite, professional, and utterly unyielding. Mr. Riley was informed in no uncertain terms that Marcus Thorne Sr. considered this an exceptionally grave matter, one that went far beyond a simple personnel issue. When Marcus Thorne Sr. finally arrived, his own jet, a sleek Bombardier Global 7500, touching down with an almost silent grace, the atmosphere in the private terminal crackled with an unspoken tension. He was a tall, imposing man, impeccably dressed in a dark suit despite his diverted journey. His face was unreadable, but his eyes, when they met David Riley's, held a glacial calm that was far more intimidating than any outward display of anger. The meeting took place in a private conference room within the FBO. MJ was present, sitting beside his father, his quiet composure a stark contrast to the visible agitation of the elite Sky Charter's CEO. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson were also invited to share their eyewitness accounts, their presence lending further weight to the proceedings. Mr. Riley, Marcus Thorne Sr. began, his voice low and even. "Your employee, Ms. Brenda Sullivan, assaulted my son. She did so without provocation in front of witnesses on an aircraft chartered by my company. This is not a matter of a misunderstanding or an employee having a bad day. This is a matter of prejudice, unprofessionalism, and physical assault." Riley, visibly sweating, launched into a torrent of apologies. "Mr. Thorne, I am appalled, horrified. There are no words to express how sorry I am that this happened. Ms. Sullivan's actions are indefensible. She has been immediately suspended pending a full investigation, though, frankly, I see no outcome other than her termination. We at Elite Sky Charters pride ourselves on our service, our discretion, our commitment to passenger safety and comfort. This is an aberration, a complete failure on our part, and we will take full responsibility." Marcus Thorne Sr. listened patiently, his gaze unwavering. When Riley finally wound down, Thorne Sr. spoke again, his voice cutting through the CEO's platitudes. "Responsibility, Mr. Riley, is more than just words and terminating one employee. This incident has highlighted a potential systemic issue. My son was profiled. He was treated with disrespect and hostility from the moment he stepped on that aircraft, simply because he did not fit your attendant's preconceived notion of who he should be. How many other passengers, perhaps those without the recourse that I have been subjected to similar treatment by your staff?" The question hung in the air, an indictment that went far beyond Brenda Sullivan. MJ watched his father, a sense of awe mixing with his relief. His father wasn't just seeking retribution for him. He was seeking to address the root cause, to ensure this didn't happen to someone else. "We will be conducting a full review of our hiring practices, our training protocols, our diversity and inclusion policies," Riley stammered, clearly grasping the broader implications. "We will spare no expense to ensure this is rectified." "You will do more than that," Thorne Sr. stated. "You will implement mandatory, comprehensive, and ongoing anti-bias and cultural sensitivity training for all your flight crews and ground staff, developed in consultation with experts my team will recommend. You will establish a transparent and robust system for reporting and investigating passenger complaints of mistreatment, with clear and severe consequences for substantiated misconduct. Furthermore, Elite Sky Charters will make a significant publicly acknowledged donation to an organization dedicated to combating racial prejudice and promoting youth empowerment in underserved communities, an organization of my choosing." Riley, pale but recognizing the unshakable resolve before him, agreed to every demand. The alternative, a public battle with Marcus Thorne Sr., and the loss of Thorne Industries' lucrative contract was unthinkable. Brenda Sullivan was, as expected, immediately terminated, her career in aviation effectively over, a harsh lesson in the consequences of an unchecked prejudice. Elite Sky Charters, under the Thorne ultimatum, embarked on a profound internal overhaul, its new policies and rigorous training programs eventually becoming an unexpected, hard-won industry model for inclusivity and passenger respect. For MJ, the incident, though deeply unsettling, solidified his understanding of his father's quiet strength and the responsibility that came with their position. He continued to pursue his passion for aviation, now with an even greater awareness of the subtle currents of prejudice that could exist anywhere, but also with the reinforced knowledge that silence in the face of injustice was never an option. The skies, once just a realm of dreams, now also represented a space where vigilance and dignity had to be actively upheld by those who had the power to do so. This ordeal served as a stark reminder: prejudice, however elegantly cloaked, is a poison, and true power isn't merely about wealth or influence, but the courage to wield it to dismantle injustice, ensuring that dignity is afforded to all, regardless of appearance or station. What are your thoughts on MJ's experience and his father's decisive actions? If stories that highlight the fight for respect and demand accountability resonate deeply with you, please show your support for our channel. Like this video, subscribe for more compelling narratives, and be sure to click that notification bell so you won't miss what we share next. We always appreciate reading your comments and knowing where you're joining us from. Thank you for being part of our community and for standing with us for justice.